Okay folks, so we're back with the final stage of the animation. We just want to finesse the timing in this animation that we've created prior to the export settings, exporting it as a video and exporting it as a Lottie file. Okay, so we've created this animation as you saw before. The wipe is a little slow for me, it takes a bit long, maybe a bit too considered, and then these three come in, and again there's then a bit of a gap, and then the final performance, and then it all disappears quite quickly. So I just want to reposition some of these things. So the first thing I'm going to focus on is that wipe of the first three elements, which is the shape 1, shape 2, and the trademark. So I'm going to select all of those and their masks, and I'm going to hit the P for position. And what we're going to do is just select some of these keyframes like so, and just drag them forward a tiny bit. So we're going to start a little bit earlier. That'll then mean with this one I need to have it visible. So that mask is going to start a little earlier rather than that one frame. It's going to start, what stage is this? This is 21 frames in. So we could make it perhaps go to 20 just for the ease of convenience. Okay, so 20 frames, boom, it's going to start. But at the moment you can see the wipe's now going to be even longer because it's lasting about 3 or 4 seconds. I'm going to select the second lot of keyframes. Now you can just drag them in this case, but if I had intermediate ones, if I hold Alt, it will compact the set. So I'm going to make this last not too long. Let's try 2 seconds and 15. Give it a second, and then I wipe. So that's the piece that I'm going to get on that transition. You can see at the moment I need to adjust some layers because the yellow layers, the shapes finish moving before the yellow layers are there. So I'm going to dial to about where I need the yellow shape, shape 2 to appear, which is just here. It's just finishing on the first one. I want to grab this and move that along so that it's in position, ready for that to continue. And likewise, about here, I need my trademark symbol to be in position, ready for it to transition as well. Okay, so let's just try the playback head, hit play. Oh, a lot faster. Oh, hang on. No, not so fast. That looks like it. I think it's my graphic card recording at the same time. So better. Okay. I might even decide to shorten it even more. So let's give it a slightly shorter frame length. Let's go to, what did we have it? We had it on 220, didn't we? So let's put the playhead on 2 seconds. No, we don't 220. What's this one? We'll just go for 5 frames in. So here. So again, we need to just make sure that the yellow is in position there, dragging along, and that the trademark is in position here, ready for those transitions. Go back to the beginning, just deselect for the moment, hit play. So that's a little quicker, happier with that. Now you'll see that the ends are unusually spaced, so again I'm just going to select, hold down Control, select the layers concerned, and we're going to go with the playback head to the end of the composition, and we're going to use our Alt right square bracket to just trim those, make them durate all the way along. Okay, so that's the position thing. That shouldn't affect the fade at the end, but we may have moved those. I don't think we have, but we'll find out in a minute. We'll go back. I'm just going to select these layers, all of them, sorry, and I'm going to hide the position thing now. We're going to come into our animation, scrub along, see that transition's a little bit quicker, starts a wee bit earlier, animates quite quickly, and then I want to bring in the type a little earlier. So I want to stretch out this type because I quite like the duration at the end. I think that performance air needs to last a bit longer. So let's focus on that initially, and then that will give us the spacing for the other. So again, I'm going to toggle this down in terms of its transform, and you can see that we have opacity presets on this. So I'll jump to the first frame, And again, with this is a good example of how you can stretch it out. So I want to keep the 1 second fade at the end, but I don't want it to only be there for like a couple of frames before it starts fading. So I'm just going to select both those keyframes and drag it a bit earlier. And I'm now going to stretch out the timeline to here. We can also, again, remember what I said earlier about using this to jump to keyframes and then snap it a little bit. So we're going to have that come in a little bit earlier, and it's going to hang around for 1 or 2 seconds before it all fades off. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that. So I can switch that one up. Now we need to space these out. Okay, so at the moment we're going to have this nice quicker white. We're then going to have a massive gap. Then we're going to have the acumen. And then we're going to have the performance there. So for me, this needs to be a little bit, these acumen elements need to be a little earlier on in the sequence. In fact, let's take the acumen as well, just for the sake of it. Need to be a little earlier. And also I want to pace them out a little bit more. So we can do that in a number of ways, but let's move it forward a little bit and work out where we want it. Not sure why it keeps rendering from the back end. So we've got the white, 1, 2, and then they start coming in with acumen. We've got a little bit of a pause before the performance there. Okay, so I'm relatively happy with that. Obviously, we have moved some of our keyframes with those layers. So I'm just going to drag to the end of the playlist, Alt, right square bracket to extend. And then we need to look at the sort of keyframes for all of these. So we'll start out with the opacity ones, which is T on the keyboard. And you can see that what we accidentally did, let's just toggle open this last one as well. What we actually then did was move the fade at the end in when we dragged the keyframes. So I'm just going to select all of those, and I'm going to move them back to the end where they should be so that they line up with these. Okay, so if I use this one to jump, you can see they're all going to start fading off at the right time at the back end here together. Okay, so that's the opacity issue. Now I want to stagger these a little bit more. So again, I can select all of these keyframes. I'm going to hold down Alt, and you can see if I drag now, it's going to stretch them proportionately, if you can see that. So that's the Alt key. So I want these to sort of last a bit longer, dwell a little bit longer, and fade in a little bit slower. Okay, so that's allowing me to space out my keyframes. So before I mess with all of the other sliders, I'm just going to hit here, and I'm much sort of happier with the timing on that. So once I'm happy, I will go and just, for the sake of tidiness, deselect first. And you can see we've got some that are sort of on 1% or something like that here instead of 0. But we can just tidy up these keyframes here. So here it starts on 1%. I'm not sure quite why. I'll make it 0. I think it's probably because of the easy ease factor. So what I'm going to do is just select layers, snap the front starting point of each layer. You can also do it like so, jumping to here, select the layer, and I think you can use Alt left square bracket to trim to that. So we'll do that. Select the right layer, Alt left, which is starting keyframe, jump to the last layer, again using the keyframe positioning thing, Alt. And so we have steady transitions coming in. Like so for the acumen, it then pauses once it finishes whilst the performance there slowly fades in. That dwells a bit longer. You can see we've got a problem with the yellow one disappearing before time, so we just need to fix that. So I'm going to hold down the shift between these, and I'm going to close off their transparency options by hitting T, opacity, and we're going to go back and check the options on these first few layers again. When we adjusted it, we obviously dragged some of the other key layers with us. So again, we're dealing with opacity here, which is T, and you can see that we've moved again some of these things. Now you can see the bottom layer here, so I'm just going to select that one, and I'm going to go for just the transparency so we can see opacity. we can see it on the others. So I'm going to use the bottom one as the guide to jump to the right place where the keyframe should be, and this is where the fades should all work, and you can see that some of our keyframes are out of whack, so I just want to adjust those, move them into the right position. So as we move the front fading in, it's obviously dragged the back keyframes as well. So just put these into position here, and now I can close all of the transparency options on all of these layers. Let's just select them all, hit T and hide. It's not selecting the layers, excuse me. Hold Shift, hit T to hide all the transparency. Scrub to the beginning. Let's play that to test. So I have a quicker transition, not super quick, and then I have a more timely animation of the individual letters, a sort of more punch emphasis on each one, then the fade in, and they all fade off together. So I'm much happier with that. So with that done, I'm going to now save it. I already saved the previous one as middle, so this one I'm going to save as final or end. Okay, well, let's call it final. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That's ready effectively for export. Okay, so you can see how we can use a combination of either manually moving individual keyframes, or if we want to paste a group of keyframes out over time, if we hold Alt, they stretch relative to the first keyframe. So it's a bit like an elasticated mechanism. Now, because we were only using that technique with these, only these ones were stretched out. So instead of these being 8 frames now, they're considerably more. Okay. But what it does is it allows us to finesse and change and adjust elements of the animation if we're unhappy. You could have hundreds of keyframes going here, including opacity, transparency, position, rotation, things like that. And if you had lots of layers with 10 or 12 transitions going on and maybe 20 keyframes on each layer, you start moving all those manually and trying to move them to sort of, thirds or something like that, a third of the time, it gets really complex. So obviously that Alt key can be absolute lifesaver. Okay, so we're done with that animation now. Join me in the next tutorial and we'll look at exporting it.